Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me from Twitter X and from YouTube. And the topic today is Trump, first day of the inauguration. And but I'd like first to start about this transition, Biden to Trump. And so my position, a lot of people they want us to take sides. It is like if you say something bad about Trump, you automatically become pro Biden. If you say something good about Trump, you become pro Trump. It is not like this. And actually, the whole system is a divide and control. Ultimately, it is really important for me to explain that Trump or Biden, that's exactly the same. I see this transition, a shift between two groups of oligarchs that are fighting over power. So it's internal struggle within the elites in the US. And I would say ideologically, one is more self-proclaimed progressive, but I see that more decadent. It's about more globalist. It's led by, of course, well, the big banking institution, but also George Soros and the World Economic Forum. And I would say the MAGA movement is a bit more, bit different, more conservative. But ultimately, I think people should never forget that this is still a fight between the 1% and the 99%. So they belong to the 1%. And this is why I am not a fanboy of Trump. I might have some good things to say about Trump, but I think it's important for me to remind people that we need to look at the big picture. We might see some progress with Trump because he's going to shake up the whole establishment. But I would say there are some red flags and people need to be extremely careful. But ultimately, when you look at who backed Trump, who was there at the inauguration, we are talking about billionaires, right? In his government, there are 13 billionaires. So we are talking about the big elites. And we see there's a big tech backing him, and there's a crypto, I would call it the crypto mafia. I mean, there's Peter Thiel. And their goal is to get richer. It has nothing to do with the necessity to make America great again. I would say so there are, well, let's say there are positive, let's say the positive and negative sides. Of course, from transition from Biden, I mean, Biden was so low that I would say, forgive me the joke, but even a goat would have won against Biden. Biden was about decadence, there was the World Economic Forum agenda. And I think also disgusting social engineering, LGBT, extremely dividing. And this globalist agenda is about destruction of nation states, while MAGA is more about focusing on the US. But there are some negative sides when it comes to this. We see Trump declaring that, like slogans, all slogans of the manifest destiny, very aggressive when it comes to Canada, annexing Greenland. Well, those are talks, but, just we need to be careful about, his ambitions. And also, I would say that the Panama Canal, annexing the Panama Canal is a real possibility. And this is probably linked to potential blockade of choke points, maritime routes that would be against China. So one of the positive things, I would say, at least the good thing with Trump is that he walks the talk. I mean, whatever he says, he does. I mean, especially this term. And this is why today I'd like to go through the executive orders. And what is surprising here is that those are all related to the promises. And it is not unlike most foreign leaders, I would say Western leaders, they make promises and they never, realize their promises. It's all empty talks. And what is surprising here is that those executive orders are pretty much what he said he would do. And he did that on day one. And this is positive. So there are internal we are going to talk about internal, but I'm more focused personally about geopolitics. So I would say that what is obvious with Trump is that he's very influenced by the Mearsheimer approach, which is just leave alone Russia, don't spread too thin, because you cannot fight too many wars, too many fronts, and that the ultimate enemy for the US is China. And that is what Trump is doing. It's not about being a dove, versus the hawkish Biden. It is about being, I would say, quote unquote, pragmatic, more realistic, and it's just a different approach but ultimately to become also, the real hegemon, because what's on the way in the way of for the US is two countries, and those two countries are sovereign states, Russia and China. Those are on the forefront. Those are the last obstacles. And I would say for the multipolar world, if a single of those two countries would fall, that would be probably the end of the multipolar world and a complete hegemony of the US. So ultimately, Trump wants that. But I would say it is going to go through coercions, through sanctions, through tariffs. And if this doesn't work, he would actually try to contain China through blockades. So this is why actually when you look at Greenland is on the Arctic routes, and the Arctic route is an alternative route for China for its exports. Panama Canal the same, it's a choke point. You have other choke points for shipping, those shipping routes is the Suez Canal. There's the Malacca Strait, which is extremely important for China. There's the Strait of Hormuz. And this is why China in the last 20 years has been working on bypassing mainly the Malacca Strait, but also going through inland routes. And the Arctic route actually is an important new route that could be very, very profitable for China, because it's shortened the lead time, and it can bypass potential choke points around the world. So I would say let's be still critical, keep a critical mind when it comes to Trump. This is what I'd like to tell my friends. I have many friends that actually have wishful thinking when it comes to Trump, and I do understand people need to have hope. They are desperate for change. They've been lied over and over, and maybe Trump might be different this term. But keeping in mind that last time he didn't actually deliver. The excuses was that the deep state was too strong. He was attacked from day one because of the Russia gates. And even in his own camp, the Republicans, you had large factions that was anti-Trump. Now, this time, he has a large majority, both in both chambers. He got the popular votes majority. So he has a large support, and he might be able to do changes. And some are extremely positive. And it seems like most of what he said he was going to do it is all in those executive orders. So what I'd like to do is to go through those executive orders, just one by one, and then maybe we'll do a recap and see where we're going with Trump. But I would say keep in mind always that my position personally, and that's my own opinion. But ultimately, I'd say that what is important is that Americans need to love their own presidents. But I'm looking at, really trying to see what would be the impact internationally. So we are going to go through. I'm going to share screen. Bear with me. This is new for me. So here we have list of executive orders, and we're going one by one, just checking. So the first one is reinstating the name Mount Kinley. So this is cosmetics. What is it? Just all cosmetic. It's about restoring some pride, more like patriotic, Renaming the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America. What does he do? Does he do anything to average Joe? Average Joe, you're suffering, you're struggling, you want to put food on the table. Trump is telling you, well, we are going to rename the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America. Well, this is cosmetic. Designated cartels as foreign terrorist organization. Well, what's the implication into this? Is once you declare that, then potentially you could have actually the US doing intervention into Mexico. That would be absolutely crazy. But again, this is maybe to put some pressure on illegal immigrants, human trafficking, maybe. I do not have the answer. Again, I'm trying to guess here. Now, ending diversity, inclusion, and equity hiring in the federal government. And this is actually it's about fighting this whole woke ideology. And I think the Americans have had enough of that. But keep in mind that this progressive against conservative is a way to give an impression of divisions. You put those problems, you antagonize people like this in the US. What you do is actually it's a divide and control. So people focus on identity politics and they don't focus on the class struggle. And I would say this is part of the strategy of the 1%. And they take advantage of that because what they need to keep doing, not only they're trying to you have factions of the oligarch in the US that are trying to keep power. But at the same time, I would say it's also the long-term strategy to keep people always divided, because once people are united, they will fight against their real enemy, which is the 1%, the oligarch, because that's what they are. We should call them, oligarch. So ending diversity. He said he would do that. He is actually starting to undo a lot of things that Biden did. The interesting thing is that when you look at those executive orders, a lot are actually about undoing what the last president did. So when you have a vicious circle of just doing and undoing, basically you go nowhere. So there's no vision. You don't have like the two parties saying, well, okay, we do not agree on many things, but what are the common visions we have for the US? Like they do in China. In China, they look at they work for the next 10 to 50 years, for the next century, for the next generations. You don't have that in the US because you have transition between one government to another, and it's about destroying what the last government did, and we do new policies. And so this is especially internally. What do we have? Temporary withdrawal of all areas on the outer continental shelf from offshore wind leasing. So this is fighting the climate change. I would call it cut. Climate change is changing, of course. Climate has always been changing, but what people do not agree on is the reasons of the changes. And I would say why am I a bit skeptical? But this is not my fight, okay? It is because you need to look at the funding. What is behind that? This is a World Economic Forum initiative, and it's a globalist agenda. And all the funding to influence the universities, the influencers or the politicians isn't all coming from the World Economic Forum. And the same when it comes to vaccines. It's the same approach. And ultimately it's guided by a globalist agenda. So I would say this is one of the policies that Trump promised to change. And I personally think, those are not most viable things. The wind, offshore wind turbines. First of all, they don't look nice. And there are other other options that are actually much more efficient. Nuclear powers, nuclear electricity, energy generation through nuclear power plant is getting more and more efficient. And there are some major breakthrough when it comes to that. And we see that in China. China is investing massively into nuclear power plant, and it's affordable, and it's quite efficient. Okay, what do we get? Revocation of any active of current security clearance held by the former intelligence officials. That is quite interesting, because this is related to the Russia Gate, and all the people that actually were from the security agencies, the three-letter security agencies, FBI, CIA, NSA, they were actually involved into these Russia Gates. They get their clearance. They don't have any more clearance, security clearance. That means he's going after them. And that's a good thing, because he's actually taking care of all those corrupt spooks. So that's a very good thing, because he needs to clean up the whole mess. And this is why you have actually above those entities, you have Tulsi Gabbard, which is going to be in charge of cleaning up this whole mess. Granting pardons to January 6 rioters. Well, first of all, I mean, I personally don't see them much of being rioters. I think they, some might have been violent, but keep in mind that this in those protesters, you had many actually that were planted by the FBI, and they were like what we call agents provocateurs. And that's what they do in Color Revolution. They do that in protest. You have sometimes you have you could have we have seen that in France for the yellow vest. You'd have actually planted people that were, I don't know, probably paid by the police. So basically, you plant them inside those protests, and sometimes they can be black blocs, and actually they do a lot of damage, and actually and this is to push for more violence and an escalation. So I think it's only right to pardon those rioters. It's extremely unfair what happened to them. This is interesting. Reevaluation of United foreign aid. So basically, I think it's for a period of 60 days. I don't know for how many days, but for 90 days, exactly. So here we have a 90-day pause in the United States foreign development assistance. And that is quite interesting. That means that they are going to stop the aid, and probably this is related to Ukraine. And they are going to do a reevaluation, meaning that this is going to put pressure on Zelensky to sit down with Putin. And again, this war is already lost. Every single day that passes, more Ukrainians are dying. And they are dying for the globalists. They're not dying for, the reason for the war was actually always, for globalist agenda, to destroy Russian economy, to actually balkanize Russia. And actually, what is good about Trump is that he realizes that what Putin was asking all along was a security agreement. A security agreement for the whole Europe, because, well, NATO has been expanding, and actually, this piece like Ukraine, which is originally part of Russia, was the red line that Putin had said all along, that just don't go that far. While declaring a national energy emergency, this is about probably self-sufficiency and lifting actually moratoriums on exploring, I guess. Let's see if I can have a quick understanding about this. But this is basically, I think, I will not dig too deep into this, but probably an expansion of national energy infrastructure. So it's about more drilling. But, again, this is something that Trump said he was going to do, and he's doing that. And we can debate about this, but I think this is really important. The US needs to have access to cheap energy. It's full of natural resources, and why not? again, restoring accountability for career senior executive. I will not go too deep into this, but accountability, I'll drop this one. This is, let's see what we got. Promoting beautiful federal civic architecture. Why not? Why not? Probably they don't want, he doesn't want more like of those woke architecture and having something more traditional, I guess. Okay, now we have restoring the death penalty in the US. Well, this is according to my knowledge, this is a state by state law. So the federal government doesn't have a say into this. Now you have routing more water from the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta to other parts of California. So this is probably related to the fire you had in California. So this is an emergency. It's quite urgent to have more water available to fight fire. I suppose, I imagine. Now securing the United States border, probably related to the wall, going back to building the wall, and this is something that he's been fighting to do, and this is going against the globalists and the George Soros, which are actually funding this human trafficking. They've been pouring millions of illegal immigrants into the US, and there's several reasons for that. One of the reasons is actually getting cheap labor, and we can call it labor, but in some ways it's almost like slave labor, and this put pressure on local wages. And in addition to that, it's about ultimately diluting an identity of a country. And this has nothing to do about being nationalistic, but the whole idea of the globalists is destruction of nation states. Besides the fact that they want to do social engineering, but they want to pour illegal immigration and ultimately destroy the identity of a country. And also what happens with illegal immigration, it actually creates insecurity, because there are clashes of culture, but also people that are coming in, they don't necessarily have a job, and it's not always the best of the people that come into a country. You have lots of criminals, and that's true, but we shouldn't generalize. But sometimes Trump, the way he talks is a bit too much, but that's a reality, and this is probably the strategy of tension. Once you have increased criminality, you create a tension within a society, and this is a good excuse to have more police states. So securing the United States border. Next one, United States citizenship does not automatically extend to those born in the United States. And that is actually going against a very old tradition. And I guess this is probably because lots of illegal immigrants, they go to the US, and actually once they're there, if they can have a baby, or they can go through the borders pregnant, and actually they have a baby, then de facto they don't have to leave because their baby is an American citizen. Realignment of the US refugee admission program. Well, that's also part of containing all those illegal immigrants. Okay, unleashing America's affordable and reliable energy. Well, this is also about self-sufficiency and being able to do more drilling. Clarifying the military roles in protecting US border, also about illegal immigration. Then this is America First trade policy that benefits American workers, manufacturers. And this is actually related to bringing back production in the US, reindustrializing the US. And I think this is a good move. It is a good move. Again, this is going to be done at the expense of US suppliers, and mainly China. And what Trump wants to do is actually reindustrialize the US. But it has to be done at the expense of China. And even though China has been diversifying its customers, but this could damage Chinese economy. And the US wants to put extreme pressure on China, and probably using the army and the threat of embargo, I would say blockades on Chinese trade is actually a way to gain some leverage in terms of negotiation. Resolving the backlog of security clearance for the executive office of the president. So this is probably about internal matters when it comes to clearances of his stuff. Withdrawing the US from the World Health Organization, even though this is a UN entity, but within the UN you have some entities that are actually pretty much controlled by the World Economic Forum and by Bill Gates, and I think he's doing what he wanted to do already back when he was in during COVID. He wanted to go against this because this organization is actually sponsored, controlled by the Global Health Corporation. Now, this is an interesting one. Delaying TikTok ban for 75 days. I've been betting on this, that what they want to do with TikTok is actually put TikTok into a distressed position. Once TikTok is in a distressed position, meaning that they cannot operate into the US, which is their biggest market, then de facto TikTok becomes zero value. Now, TikTok, there was a ban, but that ban lasted 1 or 2 days. Now they know that the US government and Trump, the elites are serious about that. But the elites, what they want to do is that for Biden or Trump, it's the same. They want to get their hand into TikTok, meaning that they want to strike a deal with ByteDance. ByteDance is the mother company, Chinese, but ultimately the ownership shareholders is actually international, and probably there's lots of US money to ByteDance. But what they want to do is basically to say, well, if you, this is a blackmail. If you cannot operate in the US, the TikTok value in the US goes to zero. So what he wants to do is a joint venture could be the US government, or probably maybe one of Trump's friends, it could be Elon Musk, that actually would buy 51% of TikTok under joint venture with ByteDance for the US. And they would control TikTok because ultimately it is about having the US government to impose their own algorithm, because we saw with TikTok a lot of pro-Gaza, anti-Israel, a lot of news were coming out, and this was actually very damaging for US reputation, for Israel's reputation. So they want to control the narrative. Now, the next one, putting America first in international environmental agreements. Well, probably that's as opposed to globalist agenda, just putting their own interest first, and that makes sense. It's always, I think this is right. Ultimately, it's working for America, and this is no matter which leader, we need to look at, is he working for your own country or not? And we see, especially in the Western world, we see those leaders not working for their own country, but for the globalist agenda. And within the globalist agenda, ultimately, it's about destroying your own country. Like, let's say, Macron or, Scholz. Those leaders are not working for Germany or France. They're working for a globalist agenda, which is ultimately how they are going to destroy their own nation state. What I mean by destroying nation state is the illusion between supranational entities. Oh, let me check. I'll try to take some questions while we're doing this show. it's a bit different. Bear with me. This is the first time I do something like this. I don't want to make it too. I'm going to do a shortcut because we're just going one by one. I'm just going to take the most relevant, and then maybe we can go into a Q&A session. It's already 30 minutes. Restoring freedom of speech. That's a good thing. Let's see, now he has got a lot of power, especially, I mean, Elon Musk too, but this pair is extremely powerful when you look at Trump. His influence, now you have Elon Musk, and I think we do not talk enough about the power that Elon Musk has in his own position. And I would say also about the big tech. Now, you saw all the big tech being all together, and you had Bezos, you had Zuckerberg, you had Elon Musk. I mean, you had $1 trillion with just the big tech, $1 trillion of net worth of each for all those individuals, and they're all backing Trump. So here I fear that no, of course, before was not ideal, but now I would be quite skeptical, and especially I'm having the experience with X, with Twitter, since I started criticizing Elon Musk. But it's, it was a soft critics, but basically he had one position in Israel before, and once he got threatened, the ADL went after him, and actually he had to go to Auschwitz and bow to the Zionists. And I criticized him for that. And I've been criticizing him for various things. And since I did that on X, my reach went from 2 million views per day to only 100,000 views per day now. So freedom of speech, no, I'm having personally my own experience. You can't. The red line now is, I would say, Gaza, Israel, but also once you start touching Elon Musk, he will destroy you on his platform. And I'm having that experience. So he cannot lecture us about freedom of speech. And I would say this is only the beginning. I think it was, the slogans was interesting at the beginning. I was hopeful, but I think once people have power, that's what they do. They had to fight to get power. Those elites, and I would say this new clan that actually taking over, they had to fight to get into power. And I'm afraid that because they want to hold on to that power, they will be as brutal as the Biden clan was. And I think Elon Musk is no exception. Ending diversity, DEI, of course, well, this is this fight between the progressive, the shift from the progressive to the conservative. Only 2 sexes. What an irony. I mean, this is absolutely a joke that you'd have to do policies about this. There is obviously only 2 sexes. Then the rest is detail, I would say, but this should not be proselytism. Whenever it comes about identity, it should be very simple, especially when it comes to sexual activities. Definitions that, people do not care. But what they were doing is pushing this ideology to completely deconstruct the human being, just a social engineering. Now, Doge, I'm very skeptical about this Department of Government Efficiency. This is about deregulation, and they put in charge 2 billionaires. There's Vivek and there's Elon Musk. They are billionaires. What happens whenever you do deregulation and actually you look into government efficiency, what they want to do is basically, that's my take, privatize profitable, valuable equities, assets from the US government. And less government, well, keep in mind that the government, of course, there might be some inefficiency like anywhere, but what they want to do, this is this ultra liberal agenda. It's the destruction of complete destruction of the government, and ultimately everything becomes privatized. While in reality, there are some resources that the government has that belongs to everybody, because ultimately the government is us. So if you privatize, we had the case, you privatize the railway like they did in the UK. Well, they start cutting roads, routes that were not profitable. So it becomes an economy that is only profit based and not purpose based. So when it's road, but road is for purpose. You cannot make everything for a profit. I think I will. Let me check. They're pulling out of a Paris Agreement. This is climate change, of course. But this is globalist agenda. We get that. I think it's pretty much. Let's drop this. I'm getting. It's been 35 minutes. This is not the best thing. This is my first try on going through a paper like this. So basically, lots of good things. What I like about Trump, to be honest, is that he's actually delivering what he promised he was going to do. He's doing it. Now, I think what I'd like to say is really that for people to keep a critical mind. Maybe you voted for Trump, you're happy, but don't make it to become like a cult. And that's what I'm afraid of. People do not realize that it might be, in many ways, it might be some positive changes, but ultimately, this is what George Galloway says. He calls it the Biden clan or the Trump clan are both cheeks from the same arse. And excuse me my French, but that's the reality. So what happened is that the elites, they control the game because they wrote the rules of the game. And if you're an American, you cast a ballot, it doesn't make it a democracy. What Americans should do is really to re-empower themselves. That means to rewrite the rules of the game. And that would make it a democracy. But at the present moment, it is not a democracy. Trump managed to get where he was, even though he's an outsider, but it's because he's a billionaire, and somehow he's backed by all the billionaire elites in the US. All the multinational corporations in the US, they're backing him because he's a winner, he's got the power, and they back him. But ultimately, you will never have an outsider. If you're really a dissent voice, you would never get into a power in the US. If you really belong to the 99%, the masses, you never actually get power. And that doesn't make it a democracy. Democracy has, you need to have several factors to have a democracy. And I would say what is the most important is really the rules of the game. It's completely rigged. You have money through politics, you have the lobby system, and whoever is actually representing you in the Congress, in the Senate, belong to the elites. They've been funded by the elites, and who pays controls the game. And in addition to that, you have the media that is completely controlled by them. So now the shift is not Twitter doesn't belong to us. Even though Trump, Elon Musk is saying, well, now you are the media. No, well, it's not. It's not. They still control the algorithm and the narrative. So I would say, well, it's one step. Trump, the change, it's one step towards reforms. They are going to have some changes, but I'm very skeptical, and I think people need to be very skeptical. They need to actually, even if you're Trump, pro-Trump, it doesn't mean that whatever Trump is doing, you should actually applaud and be cheering. It's the same as if you have a brother doing mistakes, just, you have to call him out, and you need accountability. So, and I will give you one example, is Trump, a few days ago, 2-3 days ago, issued a a meme coin, and he made around 10 billion US dollar. And those are not realized gains, of course. But if you look at the valuation of the coins he owns, he made 10 billion US dollar. And this is a scam, because ultimately he owns a majority of those coins, and people are buying to this, and by hoping that this is going to go up. And it's a kind of Ponzi scheme. Those coins, I mean, practically, Trump could be selling gradually those coins. It says that would be all profit. And if this goes down to zero, that's average Joe who will have lost that money. But it looks bad. You are president. You are actually making money because of your fame and because of the trust that people have on you. So if you are Trump supporter, you have to call him out. If you don't call him out, then you become part of a cult. And I'm not saying that, you can be Trump supporter. What I'm calling out is the people that are part of a cult. It becomes a cult. So I would say, really, people need to have keep a critical mind, really. And why you're having like this constant vicious circle of elect and regret? It's because there's no accountability. You vote, you elect someone, and basically it's very childish, because you should be able to be part of the political system, not only by casting the ballot. When you cast the ballot, you actually lose your democratic rights. It's very counterintuitive. You see, you're not part of the political game. You cast the ballot, that's over for the next 4 years, right? And basically, whatever promise the people that you elected did, there's no accountability. He can say, well, now I will actually follow my agenda. And this is why the trust in the Congress has been always around 30%, because the Congress is completely decorrelated. What people want and what the Congress is issuing in terms of laws is completely the opposite. This is why the Congress has only 30% of approval. So very counterintuitive. If you wanted to have a better democracy, you need to ask accountability. And this is why you need to have referendum rights, meaning that you can depose a government. If you have a certain amount of signature, then you can have a referendum and you can depose a government. You can, get them to step down. The problem is really this childish system of, electing your representative, and while actually people should be involved into democracy. It's not. You're playing to a rigged game. First of all, the game, the rules of the game are completely rigged. So by playing to this, you're playing to a fraud. In addition to that, if you don't have basic reforms of having direct democracy, well, there's no accountability. And that's the main problem you have. And not only in the US. I use the example of the US, but what we have in the West is exactly the same. Casting a ballot doesn't make it a democracy. Now, let me check a little bit the questions I have. I can't wait for my coin, man. I've been told there's some good Swiss chocolate inside that coin. That's true. We have actually those golden coin in Switzerland where you have chocolate. I don't know if it's a tradition, local tradition. Let me check. The whole US economy is a scam. Elon become friends with Tesla. Well, there's we could talk a lot about Elon, but I think he is becoming too powerful and maybe dangerous. Elon is the most influential man, at least in the West. He has the #1 news platform in the world. He has more than 200 million followers. He is actually influencing regime change in actually, government, I would say more conservative government. And of course, I mean, they will say, well, George Soros on the left, they're doing that too. Of course, yeah, absolutely. They're saying, why I shouldn't be able to do that? There's so much interference. Remember, for example, you had Obama actually doing a speech of support for Macron, and that was for interference. But again, the problem is that, so Elon has lots of power and he's actually calling for coup, for regime change of government. Then he has lots of money. He's extremely rich. He is behind the election of the most powerful leader in the world, Trump. He's part of the military-industrial complex. He's a big employer, so he has leverage whenever he talks to European countries, especially Germany, because there's a gigafactory in Germany. So he has a leverage because of being a big employer, but also in terms of technology, he has, he's providing rockets for the space industry, and they need his technology. So he has lots of leverage. And so, as I said, he's part of the military-industrial complex. So it's so much power for that person. So we need to keep him in check. So I would leave it here. Oh, there was a have you seen the Elon doing the Nazi salute? Okay, how I'm going to put that? I would say if you are Elon fan, I would say, even if he did a mistake, he didn't do it on purpose. Let's assume that, but at least you need to call him out to say that was a stupid, just moronic thing to do. I mean, hundreds of millions of people saw that. It's extremely embarrassing. And it's not only lifting the hand, it's really like the Nazi salute. That's stupid. So was it on purpose? Well, let's give him the benefit of the doubt, but it was a stupid thing to do. And he should be smart enough just to know that the meaning of that sign is a Nazi salute. So, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt. I think it's just that was a stupid thing to do. That's my view. I'll take a last question. I thought I was going to do like a short one, but just give me your feedback anyway. I'm just testing, seeing. You guys have been giving me a good feedback, and I feel confident that I should be doing this on a regular basis. Even though my channel, by the way, is completely demonetized, but I'll make it work, and I'll try to find some time. Let me take a last question. What about BRICS? How's that going regards changing the dynamics? They have a time clock regards Trump's going to end the Ukraine war. He's only about 3 hours left. Of course, he said 24 hours to solve the Ukrainian war. It's not going to be like this. It's going to take time. He needs to. That was a slogan. But I do believe that he's actually putting extreme pressure on the EU, on his partner in Europe, and on Ukraine. And just the fact that he's actually freezing the transfer of funds to Zelensky, he's not giving any choice to Zelensky. Now you need to be an adult and sit down. And because it's urgent for Trump to shift his focus towards China. So I hope you like the show. Anyway, feel free to like and share. That's what my partners that has YouTube channels, that's what they say. But I think it's good for the algorithm, even though being shadow banned, I'll be limited. But I will try to go into other platforms. I need to check what is available out there. But I would say just to resume a little bit what we said, recap what I said just before is really don't fall into the trap into Trump or Biden. They have a long-term policy which is quite similar, but they belong to the billionaire class. So when I see fanboys completely blinded saying, "Oh, I'm 100% pro-Trump or pro-Biden," well, it's not. They do not care for you. They do not belong to your social class. It's a class struggle, and if people want to be empowered, they need to join together, look for what unites us, and that's the 99%. Once they actually start realizing that they are stronger together And whoever's ruling them, those are oligarch, billionaires that live in another world. They they have slogans. You can buy into this, but it's all BS. It's all a way to control you, and ultimately, they will not work for you. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. And well, if you, depending on where you are, it's 10 p.m. here in Hong Kong. And for the one that are in Asia, have a good evening. And the one in Europe, have a nice, and the US, have a nice day. Bye for now.